going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of JaAR. JaAR, for those of you that may be new, stands for Joe
and Amy
Review, and this is now back to our weekly to twice weekly show where we will be reviewing the Magic stories. We took a little bit of a break there because, you know, when you cram stories in and then have wide valleys of time, it'll take us a while to finish these, but we are here finally for the first of the Brothers' War stories. And so today we are here for The Brothers' War, Episode 1, The End, by Miguel Lopez. My quick review at the top of this one is this story was awesome. We enjoyed it, and I am, if this is how this one starts, I am very hopeful for the future. So I highly encourage you to check it out. Amy, what about you?
I concur.
It's just great. It was really good.
What he said.
Thank you. Well, we'll talk more about it, obviously, in the full review itself. But if you did not get a chance to read this story for yourself, or if for whatever reason you read it day of and you've forgotten it since, which, I mean, it's been like less than a week, so I would doubt it, but, you know, no judgments.
I forget things the second they happen.
I'm not dissimilar. You are more than welcome to check the description down below. The top link will take you to this story because, you know, sometimes the stories aren't on the story tab yet when they first come out. Sometimes they drag their feet on putting them in there. I don't know why, don't ask me. I actually have not checked, so I could be fully wrong. They could be there now, but I know the day that the first two stories were released, they were not on the story tab yet. So whatever the case may be.
Where did you find them?
Twitter or Facebook, or both. Because through scrolling through Twitter and Facebook, they were like, hey, it's the stories, and so it was like the link to the first and second stories. So,
Okay.
Like I said, they just, because of what we do and the nature of it, I just kept my computer on for days and kept the stories up on the computer for days. That's me and me alone, you know. I just chose not to like bookmark them or whatever. So yeah, regardless, you don't have to go through all that nonsense. The top link in the description down below will take you there. Don't be like me. You can just follow that link, go read the story, and then of course, we would love it if you would come back here and join us as we do the full review, which will happen in just a moment. But first, before we do that, thank you so much for being here. Let's get some stuff out of the way first. Welcome to Geek for All. Like I said, I hope you're enjoying yourselves. If you are enjoying the content that we put out on this channel or our other channels, Video Games for All or Gluten Free for All, links down in the description box below, on any of the channels that you're on. Please don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell so that you get notifications whenever any of our videos come out, and more of this series in the coming days and weeks, because there are going to be, I believe, 10 stories to review. There have been 10 in the past. If there are not a full 10 this time, whatever the case may be, we will be reviewing every free Brothers' War story that is put up on Wizard's website in the order, to the best of our knowledge, in the order that they come out. So definitely stay tuned for that. And then we are live every Monday and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time right here on this channel for streams. So Mondays, if you're a fan of Magic the Gathering, we stream MTG Arena. That's every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Right here on this channel. And on Fridays, we stream whatever video game we happen to be playing at the time. Because we are at the end of October, we are at the end of our spooky month stream. And so this past Friday, we finished Eternal Darkness Sanity's Requiem for the GameCube. If you have not seen that game, it is truly one of my favorite games of all time. Amy, did you end up enjoying it as well?
Yes.
So what we will be doing this week is we will be coming back to that game for one last time to finish out the month, because there are two other routes in the game that you can take, and so we are going to do that, and we're going to show the differences that those other two routes have to the main route that we played through for the past few weeks when we were streaming the game prior. So we would love to have you join us, check out the game for yourself. It's been a lot of fun, and like I said, the other channels linked down below as well. Thank you so much for doing that. Any and all support that you're willing to give really helps out a lot. And then last but not least, if you're not aware of how YouTube works, likes and shares go a very long way, so we really appreciate it. But after all of that...
Subscribing is free.
Correct. Thank you. That's absolutely right. Yeah, no shade on Twitch. Just a reminder that subscriptions here are free. Twitch subscriptions are the ones that you pay for. Just a reminder. So... yes, on to the full review itself. We are here for the Brothers' War, and interestingly, this story is called The End, and episode number 2 is called The Beginning. So this is kind of a preview of things to come, I assume. But like, I don't know how they're going to go about it, whether this is truly the end, and so episode 4, or episode 5, I guess, for example, will be the events just before this, or if it will be that this is like what's going to happen in between episodes 4 and 5, and then episode 5 shows the end of this. Because this was cool, and I would love to know what happens next.
Yeah, but it seems like another beginning. Like, it's called the end, but it's the end of the first thing, and it's the beginning of the next thing. I mean, that's really what the story is. Yeah,
it's just that that's not seemingly our concern. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not.
Well, we don't get to read it.
That's what I'm right. But that's what I'm curious about. So the other thing is, if you're unaware, the way that we reviewed Dominaria United is going to similarly be the way that we review this. We are not Dominarian scholars. No pun intended, right? I'm not talking about like I'm in the world of Magic and I'm a Dominarian scholar. I mean that we have been reviewing Magic Story for years now. Many years. And yet, those years did not include the original Dominarian stories, the novel versions of Dominaria. We reviewed 2018's Dominaria, whatever it is, the Dominaria set. That one we were around for, we read the stories, we reviewed the stories by Martha Wells, as well as, like I said, many stories from years prior to that as well. But we are not Dominarian scholars, so the first time through the Brothers' War, we are not fully familiar. We are able to check wiki articles and remind ourselves of things that we've read up on to give ourselves some of that knowledge, but we do not fully have that knowledge. So for example, when I just talked about this story, I couldn't tell you if this actually happened in the story and we know what the follow-up is from, what's his name? From Radek's seeming attack on Pendragon. I don't know. You're more than welcome to let us know in the comments down below. That would be cool.
Yeah.
Because honestly, anything that we talk about today, if you agree with us, if you disagree with us, if we messed something up, we want to hear from you in the comments down below. Keep the conversation going and give us your opinions as well. Yeah. We are two people sitting here giving you ours. We are not the end-all be-all. We never have been and we never will be. And we want to hear from all of you as well. So definitely let us know your thoughts. So something that starts off here, it tells us that we are in 69 AR, which stands for the Argivian Reckoning, and it's the calendar system that's like based off of the birth of Urza and Mishra. So it's similar to here on Earth, how we gauge our years, or used to gauge our years, based on the birth of Christ. And now it's, CE and BCE, so Common Era and before the Common Era, but it used to be BC being before Christ and Anno Domini being after. So it's similar here where AR refers to the birth of Urza and Mishra, who were born on the first and last day of the year, it said. So, and I know that for folks like Jay and Ellie, who is currently their lore master at Wizards. I don't know his exact title, and so I do apologize for that. But that he is basically their continuity expert to make sure that they are following along with what the stories have been in the past and making sure that they're staying consistent today, or that if they are trying to do any retconning, like they might or are likely to do here in this set, that they're going to do so kind of knowingly and obviously. Right, because Teferi's around, so Teferi could absolutely mess with things to change things around, but that presumably that will be made very obvious. That oh, well, I did this, or he did this, and so now it's going to be different. Okay. This story had none of that. There was no 2-hour knowledge, right, from what we've seen in this story. There was no Teferi meddling, although again, because this is a precursor, but is a later story, you don't technically know how this differs, or if it does at all. Right. But we shall see what that means and how that goes about. But it talks about, this story started with some amazing descriptions of the end of the war and how it affected that area of Dominaria. right? I wrote down, the Visceral Sea is now empty. Verdant Argoth ended up being basalt spires in the ocean.
Yeah.
That's all that's left of it. So it's basically a wasteland at this point, which is awesome, but also obviously terrible.
Right.
For merchants who would be going out for trade and for travel, there were resupply islands that they would go to resupply on their journeys. Those islands are gone.
Yeah.
Or they're not, the merchants are not able to navigate properly because maybe the stars have been displaced, or the plane itself is like off its axis or something, where the stars that they would have been traveling by are no longer accurate representations of where they're trying to go.
It's the Bermuda Triangle.
I mean, it's not, but it's also not that. They talked about the fact that, I mean, this is all we know, that this is all from the Silex blast that Urza set off. And the story hints at that and flat out mentions it a couple of times, but it caused earthquakes that toppled parts of the city, big parts of the city, killed hundreds of people from buildings collapsing on top of them. Killed most of the royal family of Pendragon because they were holed up in their fortified castle, which was on a mountain that fell into the sea.
Yeah.
So...
like it does.
Yeah, not a good time. But yeah, that happened to them as well, so they're gone. And so that brings us to our main character, so to speak, for this story, which is Kayla bin Krug.
Yeah.
Who is the partner, the wife, if you will, of Urza. And...
Which, God bless.
Yeah, I mean, she deals with quite a lot in this story because of that.
Yeah.
All negative, I would say. All negative.
Yeah.
Can we agree on that? She did not have a great time, and I don't blame her for not having a great time. She didn't do anything wrong though, actually, I guess certain people would disagree with that. But in the lead up to the beginning of this story, she didn't really seem to have done anything wrong. She was just living her life and then ended up being one of the only remaining nobles after the cataclysm. And so now she's in charge of Pendragon. She's the boss. She's the leader. And she didn't want that, but she's got to kind of pay for the sins of her husband, so to speak. She mentioned that because of the war, she lost her father, she lost her son, and she lost her husband. Until then, she finds out that she didn't lose her husband, and that's even worse. Or somehow that's worse.
It's worse because he's the cause of it all.
Yes, that's correct.
So, yeah, I mean, the one thing she did wrong was marry Urza.
Fair.
Because he sucked.
Which is definitely something that I think the authors of this story, as well as, again, the lore masters of this story and longtime Vorthos, have been trying to make very clear. Because folks who have just played the card game, right, might look at Urza's Saga, Urza's Legacy, Urza's Destiny, the card sets, as well as Urza's Tower, Urza's Mine, and Urza's Power Plant, and be like, oh, these cards are super powerful, and, all these things like that have Urza in their name are great. Urza's awesome. No, like Urza may be awesome in that his power is awesome, right? He is awesomely powerful, but that doesn't mean that it's good, that it's a good thing. It just means that it's a lot. His powers are great. And again, great not being great, but great. They are a lot.
Large.
So
Vast and terrible.
Yeah. And so we don't see Urza nor Mishra in this story, nor do we see Ashnod, but we hear about Ashnod. We'll get to that. But we see Kayla and we see Tawnos. Those are the main characters. Like, we see other people like Scout Captain Myrell and Radek of Krug that I mentioned, but I assume the names that we will be hearing again at some other point will be folks like Tawnos and Kayla, as opposed to, and Ashnod, as opposed to some of the other folks who seem to be people that are singular to this story and likely will not be seen for the rest of Brothers' War, unless somehow we come back to this and find out the aftermath of this. To talk about how amazing this story was, you can't not mention the initial meeting between Kayla and Tanos in her chambers or her war room or wherever it was that they met in the castle. And what? It was a lot. It was a lot. I was just going to say that. It was a lot. And it was awesome. It was so well done.
Yes.
Tanos got his ass handed to him left and right, verbally, mentally, emotionally, everything but physically, basically. And, I mean, Kayla didn't walk away unscathed either, because she found out that Urza was alive during that conversation, which she was not aware of. And I thought it was a little odd. Again, I don't, like, we've talked in the past about, like, reading a story and hearing about Nissa or Nahiri or whatever, and saying that we feel like their characterization was off.
Right.
I am not familiar enough with Kayla's characterization, but it felt odd to me in general. Not because of past actions, but just as, like, the human condition. I thought it was very odd that Kayla, after having torn into Tanos as she did, and getting pissed off at Tanos and kind of blaming Tanos, so to speak, for what her son went through and what she went through and having lost her father, and basically using Tanos as a stand-in for Urza, right? Because that's really all she was doing.
Yeah.
Was like, you were my husband's right-hand man. She even said to him, you spent more time with him in our marriage than I did because of his war, as she called it.
Right.
And so she was upset with Tanos because of his part in it, but also because Urza wasn't there for her to be upset with Urza.
Right.
It seemed, to me at least. But, and yet, she finds out that Urza is alive. Tanos is the one who delivers that news to her, and she's been killing the messenger the whole time, right? Like, it's the don't kill the messenger thing. Yeah. She's been seemingly doing that the whole time. And yet, at the end, because Tanos had shown up with blueprints or paperwork or whatever of designs of mechs, and saying, well, we could build these, and they could help us rebuild this place, rebuild Pendragon, make it safe and better than it was. And as he put it, the line that Pendragon always had was, anyone who can see Pendragon's light is welcome, right?
Yeah.
And he said, I want to spread that light out further to let people know, right? The world may be devastated right now, but there is still a place.
Right.
And ironically, the first big contingent of people that show up to Pendragon, they're not really looking for, a welcoming light on. They're, in fact, looking to tear all those lights down because they've been bolstered by tech, by Power Stones. And those people aren't big fans.
Sorry.
Just saying.
Just
God bless you.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
It happened. I did it.
And so I just thought it was odd that at the end of the conversation between Kayla and Tanos mentions that Urza's alive. Kayla gets very upset and then just says to Tanos, okay, tomorrow or whatever, soon, I will let you get to work on building these machines. Here's where all the equipment is. And I thought to myself, okay, when's the other shoe going to drop? Like, when are we going to get to the point where she tells him he can do this, and then as soon as he starts doing it, realizes that it's a trap and she didn't actually want him to do it. She wanted him to say, you know what, never mind, I shouldn't, it's a bad idea.
Right.
And then she could, like, slap him around and be like, what have you not learned? Right?
Yeah.
And that never happened. I just thought it was a very odd turn of events. That she was super upset with him, found out something very upsetting, and then was fully okay with it and let him go about doing exactly what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just seemed odd. What's that?
It's a little awkward.
Yeah. And, I mean, that's, I guess, supposed to be where we get when we get towards the end of the story with Radek's point, right? So I guess if you didn't read the story and you're still here for a summary, here's my best estimate of it, right? Radek shows up with what's called a column of people, just a long trail of marching people that they thought were thousands, but it was really tens of thousands. Was that what it was? Or tens of thousands, but it was really hundreds of thousands? Something like that. There were a lot of people in Radek's group. And Radek basically shows up and he says, we're on our way to the tower. Again, I mentioned Urza's tower, right? They're on their way to the White Tower. And they want to tear it down brick by brick because, among other things, they are trying to get rid of the machine plague on the Earth, basically. Because it's all the leftovers of the war between Urza and Mishra. Can't combine them? That doesn't make sense. Urzra. No. Anyway, sorry. There are meld cards in this set, but those two do not meld together, that's for damn sure.
Hey, maybe if they did, it all would have been a lot better off.
I mean, the last meld card that we saw of two established people melding together was Brazella. You really want that?
Brazella was...
You were...
Never mind.
You were grossed out by Brazella. I loved that card. Anyway.
It was kind of a cool concept, though.
Yeah, but it was gross.
Gross.
Yeah, I loved it. Anyway, that's the dichotomy of Amy and I's people. Well, let us know in the comments. Are you a lover of Brazella or a hater of Brazella? Let us know. But it helps to give, because like when you look at that story, I think you were, at first when I looked at it, I was like, this guy, Radek, is crazy.
Yeah.
Like he's just like, all mechs are evil. Like all robots are evil. They destroyed our world. We need to go out and destroy all of them.
Yeah, he was very over the top.
Yeah. And was showing up and like kind of being disrespectful, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Kayla was right there trying to talk to him, and it was in front of all of her people who were like kind of nosy, right? They're peeking around the corner. They're like, what's going on out there? Can somebody tell me what's going on? And so Radek is talking past Kayla and just saying like, hey, anybody that wants to join us, you're more than welcome. And Kayla's like, I'm right here. And he's like, listen, you're the wife of Urza. I'm talking to them, And it's like, wow, dude, you can't just come in here like that. That's messed up. So
he did, though.
He really did. And then come to find out that there were spies, if you want to call them that, but there were people inside of Pendragon for a while, noticing that Pendragon was being built up with mechs, and they then left, they being the spies or the folks who were there, left and went to Radek and other folks to tell him, listen, they're using mechs. These things that destroyed our planet, that destroyed this world, they're being used as if nothing happened by the wife and the apprentice of Urza, the destroyer of our world, and they're just building it right back up again with the use of these demon machines, right? That's what they called them. And honestly, based on the interaction at the beginning and how upset Kayla was, I can't fully say that Radek's wrong here.
Right. Yeah, because at one point I said, whoa, he's very over the top. But he's not wrong.
No, because he said to her, he's like, what's wrong with you? How are you slowly going back to the way that Urza was doing things?
Right.
Because she was accusing Tanos of that. She's like, you're just like Urza. And then the next thing you know, however many years later or months later, they're building mechs again. And not only are they building mechs, but Tanos said, flat out, listen, Kayla, this is how we have to do it. No weapons, just tools. Right? They're not for war, they're for rebuilding. That's it. And Kayla says to him, well, but we can train them for defensive purposes, right? Where did that come from? Why?
It makes no sense.
But again, it's that, it's that like seed of corruption.
Yeah.
That like spreads and spreads and spreads. And then when Radek shows up, again, he seems a little radical, right? Maybe that's why he's named that. Who knows? But he seems a little radical, and then when you actually step back and look at it, you're like, but is he though?
Right.
It's literally the wife and the apprentice of the person who destroyed the world starting to do the same thing that the Destroyer of the World did.
Right.
I
can't blame him.
No.
Feeling the way he feels.
No.
I cannot.
It's so weird that they would just, like, not realize that was what was happening. And now, to be fair, like you said, Radic was being a bit over the top, right? Maybe, and I don't know this for a fact, but maybe if somebody showed up and said, do you realize what you're doing? Can somebody, like hold up a mirror and let Kayla, like, look at what's going on?
Yeah.
Like, stop for a second. Radic showed up and was like, we're destroying these mechs. Yeah, like, it was very aggressive.
Right.
And the human condition, sometimes when people are presented with immediate aggression like that, their instinct is to turtle up and become defensive. Right. So you're not going to be open-minded to be able to hear that.
for defensive purposes.
Basically, yeah. But it was defensive purposes, but notice the last line of the story, where Kayla says, save your arrows, right? Myrell asked if they should fire upon Radic as he's leaving to go back to his group, because Radic basically said, at dawn, if you have not destroyed all these things, I will, or we will.
Right.
And when Myrell asked if they should fire upon Radic, Kayla said, save your arrows, we'll need them for tomorrow. Again, arguably, if people are charging your gates, arrows can be considered defensive, but they're also offensive. And so, is that going over the line, or is that being defensive? I would say it depends on the circumstances, but it's not...
I would say it's all ridiculous. Just fuck these people. No, this is a great story, but the sad thing is that, like you said before, it's just this cycle, this seed of corruption that gets worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
And it just keeps happening to this place. They don't get a break from the ridiculous BS. Or BW. Brothers War.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean... war-torn countries have more incentive to do things about it. And if the wrong person has the wrong idea, that thing they do about it is get in another war.
Yeah.
I wish I could say it was unusual, but it isn't.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's that age-old fucking story. It's history. It's the present. It's probably the future. It's humankind. It's what we do, and it's a load of crap, and I hate it.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say.
No, I mean, it's perfectly fair. With, again, like I said it before, and I meant it, and I'll say it again, with anything that we talk about, let us know your thoughts. Do you think that Kayla was going over the line here? Do you think that Radic was too radicalized? Or do you think, like we're saying, that you kind of see his point at a certain juncture? That it gets to the point of, like, you guys are doing the same thing. Like, you're getting there slower, maybe, than Urza and Mishra did, but you're kind of still getting there.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the point, right? Is that extremism, no matter what side you're on, the good side or the bad side, is bad. Because it's extreme. And the only thing that's right is everybody coming together and understanding one another enough to prevent that from happening, to prevent war from happening, to prevent devastation to the planet from happening, to prevent just a lack of understanding that causes extremism. all of those things, you know. Yeah, I mean, that's the point, right? Like, Urza is the protagonist and Mishra is the antagonist, but in reality they both fucking suck and we all know it.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
They're both gigantic assholes who had too much power and didn't deserve to have it and needed to, like, spread that out and empower the people in a, you know, like a democracy would, or like an actual effective government or social system or something.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's just what humans do, and it sucks.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this story did a good job of, like, proving how people can be angry at how extreme the system is that hurts them, and that anger can cause them to be extreme in the other direction and hurt back. And a lot of times when you're in that headspace, you want to hurt back.
Mm-hmm.
You want to cause the same harm that was caused to you. And that's not the way to fix things.
Yeah,
it just isn't.
Obviously the line of an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind kind of a thing.
It just isn't.
Yeah. Yeah. There was, I was just scanning through to make sure I didn't miss anything. And the one thing, I only wrote down one quote from the story. I mean, I mentioned the stuff about the visceral sea and what Argoth turned into and everything like that, but those weren't exact quotes. That's just discussing it. But the only quote that I wrote down from this story was one that stood out to me a lot, and probably to you as well. She being Kayla here, she was more than a forgotten, bereaved wife.
Yeah.
That's super
you
powerful.
Read that, like, I was like, ugh. You know, I just had that thickness in my chest.
Yeah.
And throat.
Yeah.
Like I swallowed something too big for my throat.
Yeah. Because we have both in our lives sat in on groups of kids. I mean, the groups that we've worked with were kids who lost parents and or siblings and have discussed going back to school after that. And you think if a kid's parent dies, you know their class is going to find out about it. Especially if they're young enough where they're in like the one class all day or the one classroom all day. So the teacher is going to say, oh, you know, Amy is out this week because her mom passed away and this is what that means and whatever the case may be. And so when that kid comes back to school, that's what they are.
Right.
It's unfortunate because it shouldn't be that way. So please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But that's Kayla's point here. She is out amongst her people. And the looks that she's getting are, she is the forgotten, bereaved wife of the destroyer of the world.
Right.
But that's not all that she is.
Right. And
And
if that's not a stigma to have on yourself, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Yeah. Right. And so,
Yeah.
you know, it's obviously, you know, again, we're speaking from a place of having seen children dealing with it, but again, it's not.
And adults as well. I
Yes.
think.
Yeah.
There are plenty of adults there who have shared their stories as well, and you know, or the kids will talk about the surviving parent and say like, oh, the rest of the family shunned them, or you know, they're like so stuck in their grief that they can't, you know, help me as the child out and you know, help me grieve or help me just live my life the way a parent needs to help me as a child do those things.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it a lot of times it boils down to other people outside of themselves not knowing what to say or do.
Right.
And so there's kind of two ways that can go if the person doesn't know, or a couple ways, I shouldn't say two ways. there's a couple ways, right? They can just be there to listen, which is like really nice, or they could do some not so nice things. Not necessarily purposefully, but they could say the wrong thing, which is not okay. And that can fall into many different categories depending on who you are.
Yeah, because a lot of times it's good intentions that they have. They just are saying something that doesn't actually help.
Or they could, because they don't know what to say, back away. And now that...
Or do something hurtful.
Sure, I wasn't going that malicious, but you're absolutely right. That does occur as well.
There were kids saying like, oh, you know, like they vandalized my locker and stuff like that.
Yeah, but I'm talking about somebody just walking away, right? I don't know what to say. I can't put up with you because I don't know how to make you feel better, which is silly, right? They may not know that it's silly, but it's silly because it's not your job to make them feel better. Maybe they just need you to be there and not talk to them about the fact that their family member is dead or their loved one is dead.
Just be normal.
But
like, just do regular stuff.
But because that stigma is there, or that like cloud is over their head, they don't want to do that. They're just like, I'm just gonna not. And so now this person not only has a loss of a loved one, but now they have a loss of friends or people around them or support systems because those people don't know what to do, so they just back off. And so that's sort of what Kayla's talking about here, right? She was royalty prior to being in Pendragon, so she knows what that's like, and now she is a forced leader here in Pendragon, and yet not only is she a forced leader, but she also has to deal with the fact that her people are kind of pitying her at like a constant point or on a constant basis. That's not helpful for her either.
No, that really sucks. Especially like there's a component as a leader of that being like a difficult thing, right? Because now not only are you dealing with people treating you that way, but you also are dealing with feeling like you have less authority because they're not listening to you because they feel like you're just someone to pity, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So I didn't mean to like end it on that note, but it was truly something that we didn't get a chance to talk about and I thought was really important to talk about because that line was damn good.
Yeah.
Because the story was damn good.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And it really made me think too about how the kids will often talk about how like, okay, everyone is like surrounding you and giving you food and helping you out and giving you good wishes and all these things, and then all of a sudden that number of people dwindles and dwindles and dwindles and they've moved on with their lives and you're trying to do the same but you just can't.
Yeah.
So like that is what the Forgotten reminded me of the most.
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, hey, sometimes we get heavy in discussions here. You are more than welcome, although please don't ever feel compelled, but you are more than welcome to join in. Does that ring true to you as well? If so, why? We would love to hear from you. Yes. Again, whatever you are comfortable discussing, if that is something that you're comfortable bringing up, and then literally anything that we talked about in this story, especially if you didn't like this story. If you didn't like it, tell us why, right? We will never argue with you. We just want to hear other sides, right?
Yeah.
Because if we both really enjoyed it, sometimes we're sitting here and saying that we both didn't like it. And we're asking, did you like it? Tell us why. Right. So the opposite can also be true. We really liked this one. If you didn't like it, tell us why. Right. We want to know. So
maybe those things that we talked about last were like too rich for your blood, and you're like, can I just have like a nice story, please? And that's fine. We understand that as well. Put that in the comments if you're sitting there going, well, these stories are just always so depressing.
Yeah.
And there's like nothing to them that is lighthearted and fun to make me want to come back and keep reading. We want to hear that too. Yeah.
Well, and the interesting thing is that line that we talked about was one line in the entire story.
Yeah.
And there are probably other single lines in the whole story that meant something to somebody else that didn't enter our radar.
Right.
If there's a line like that for you, leave it in the comments below.
Yeah.
Because don't forget.
What resonates with us isn't what's going to necessarily resonate with you.
That's right. Because each line was presumably put there for a purpose. And so if it touched you, if it made you feel something, let us know in the comments down below. Because joining in on that discussion with us, with your fellow commenters, keeping the conversation going, we're back, baby, is a great way for all of you to join us as we show off our...
Hashtag Vorthos Pride.
Yeah, this is a great way to start off this series of stories. I'm super excited to see where it goes. I am hopefully optimistic, right? So we will see in the coming days and weeks where these stories do end up taking us. And we hope that you'll be there to join us. Like I said up at the top, please don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell so that you get notifications whenever any of our videos come out. More JaARs, like I said, in the coming days and weeks. We are going to try to do 2 a week.
We're going to try.
Schedules permitting, we've got a lot going on, so we make no promises.
So much.
But we will do the best that we can. And stay tuned to the channel one way or another, because if there is an early access event for MTG Arena, and if we are lucky enough to be invited, we will be doing that. We are going to do our best to get out for the pre-release, as we always do for Brothers War, and get to do the opening of the kits that we do with our sponsor store, Champion Card Collector in Poughkeepsie, New York. So stay tuned for that as well. Like I said, you don't have to do the thing again, but subbing and ringing the bell is a great way to make sure that you find out when, God damn it, when all of those videos come out, whenever they do. So thank you for bearing with us. We are getting into a new set, which means there's a lot of stuff to do, and we would love it if you would come along with us on this ride. So
yeah, because it'll be fun.
Absolutely. So that's going to be the end of this particular episode. We'll be back with more, hopefully later this week, but definitely more in the coming weeks to go. But for now, from us here at the Geek for All family of channels, I have been Joe.
And I'm Amy.
And as we always say, in whichever video of ours you watch next, we will see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.